Are we filming? Yes, we are. So welcome to another podcast. I haven't done one of these for a few weeks, and I'm going to change things around a little bit. I want to talk about a few subjects today. Rather than answer specific questions and respond to comments from viewers, just to change things a little bit. But what I'm talking about may be inspired by some comments I have received. I'm not sure how I'm going to go with the podcast, but I really enjoy doing these. I really enjoy answering and responding to comments. But my health feels good enough to do this in one take and just have a chat with you today about stuff. And if I'm successful, great. I might have to edit it occasionally if I have to end up in a coughing fit, but I feel okay. I think this is number 45. Not quite sure, but we'll go with it. And today, I'm actually drinking just plain old water, just to keep my throat from drying up completely. So first thing, and I'm referring to notes in this is the first Filofax I ever bought or acquired. This is my Filofax Sherwood, because I think it's appropriate today. And before I start, I just want to say about this Sherwood. Several people want to know more about it. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that because I've spoken about it occasionally, and I've recently done a YouTube short, which is a vertical format video of less than 3 minutes in length, and I'm going to do a few more of those. So I quite enjoy them because it's just additional to my normal content, and I enjoy them, and I know that they're well received. They appear to be well received. Although one person said it was rubbish, but each their own. You know, I can understand. I can understand that, and I still see it as constructive criticism. Maybe it was rubbish, maybe it's not. Who knows? But I may well address this whole Filofax Sherwood issue, and I know that it's an issue because there is this myth, rightly or wrongly, that Filofax quality has changed over the years, but not in a way that everybody understands or agrees with. But I have got some experience of Filofaxes, one or two of them older than me. I actually have a binder, not a Filofax, but it's very similar, that's over 100 years old, and I've done a review of that. So I love this brand, the Filofax brand, and I'm very interested in it. But as far as quality goes, it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to quantify, and everything's very subjective. I mean, I bang on about, and I'm not going to use props because I appreciate that people are often listening to these podcasts, so I'm going to try. This is part of my experiment today. I'm going to try and not hold things up to the camera. I'm going to try and describe things instead, for the benefit of those people that are actually listening to this as a podcast, even though it's being hosted on YouTube. But there was a transition from a company that was essentially making, if you go back to, as I understand it, the days of Filofax, 1910, Philadelphia in America, the concept of a personal-sized binder. Wasn't an organizer then, but maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't think it was called an organizer. But it is my belief, and I've heard this mentioned on several occasions, that the size, the dimensions of a personal-sized binder or organizer have remained largely the same for over 100 years. And they were designed to fit an engineer's pocket, so that he or she, but mainly he back in the day, I guess, was able to extract the inserts from a larger database, typically drawers in a wooden or metal cabinet, and take those with him to a plant or an engineering site where he could refer to those specific inserts, those data sheets, if you like, so that he could or she could fix the equipment that they had been sent to fix. And I've always thought about that. It's this predates me. I mean, I'm in my 60s, so the system, the ring binder system, predates me by many decades. But I think I'm constantly reminded in my mind about the utilitarian nature of these binders as facilitating business, or specifically repairs. I mean, later, I guess, data sheets were available for all sorts of things. As we know from the heyday of the Filofax company, there were literally thousands of specific inserts for people to read. I mean, books, paperback books were available in Filofax format. Time Out in London did some fantastic guides, like a guide to eating out, a guide to doing this, a guide to doing that. There are maps. I've got a set of maps from Cardiff, which is the capital city here in Wales. And for many years, you used to get fold-out maps of London, which are kind of the maps. I have an affinity to maps, and so I lament the fact that you do not get maps in Filofaxes now. But I guess that's probably a global thing, isn't it? It's I imagine it's difficult to pre-insert maps of a specific country to match the end destination in that distribution chain. So those that are going to Sweden, do they have like maps for Stockholm, for instance? Or if they're sent to America, what maps would you insert in Filofaxes where they're being sent for sale in America? New York? Well, that's no good if you live in Chicago or San Francisco. So it's an interesting thing. Or if they're in a stationery store in Alaska, should you have maps for Anchorage? It's a tricky thing. I mean, there are inserts for all sorts of applications, including maps and things like church records, military records, golf records. I mean, when I come across these, sometimes when I buy a used Filofax on the open market, quite often eBay, but not always eBay. I have bought several Filofaxes in bricks and mortar auctions, but I love not only looking at and keeping hold of these inserts, but also sharing them with you from time to time. But the Filofax thing, the whole thing, evolved from those early days of Flatfax, and companies get bought and sold. It is a thing. It is a thing that because of the way copyright law works, and I'm talking about over the last 30, 40, 50 years, it's not something, the design, the measurements of where the rings and the ring size and the dimensions of the pages and thus the binder that holds them, there's no real, you can't really put a patent on functional design. So there has been this discussion over the last few months that I've come across, where some people have been talking about some companies, some recently formed companies. I won't mention them by name, but you know who they are, who have produced some fabulous binders, some personal organisers that I really rate, out of the finest leather, the finest quality ring mechanisms at I'm not saying put the Filofax brand to shame, because it's a different market. It's more high end, I guess. And also it appeals to those people that prefer a utilitarian product, more akin to those that we read about at the very, very beginnings of the ring binder era. And although the fax company, I guess it started the ball rolling in 1910, I have examples of binders using different mechanisms in a slightly different format, where the product goes back much further. Into the Victorian age, so there wasn't a monopoly over this side. It just evolved, didn't it? It evolved into a sort of fairly standard. Not all of them, not every single one employed the standardized personal size ring spacing that we're all familiar with. There were a few that didn't adhere to that, and certainly with A5 models. Oh, excuse me, I nearly thought I had hiccups then. There are some A5 models with what might be described as A5 spacing, and other A5 models that have the same spacing, the ring spacing, as you would find in a standard personal sized binder. So there's a lot going on here, but I want to return to this whole thing about my perception of the Filofax brand in terms of quality. And part of that is flatability, or the lack of. And this isn't the first time I've mentioned flatability. Of course, it's one of my main passions and sometimes bugbears. I don't want to criticise Filofax, the Filofax brands, too much, but it must be said that this isn't this. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There have been many models in the past that have had good flatability, and I believe that flatability, at least for me, maybe others too, is the key to using a binder such as a Filofax as a working tool. It must have good flatability. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. It depends on the application. If you are just using a binder as a reference, then you're not writing one-handed. You're typically opening it with two hands and you're flicking through it in the way that you might do a paperback book. Paperback books generally don't have good flatability. Hardback books quite often do not. It depends on the binding, and it is the same thing for a binder like a Filofax. Excuse me. It's all down to the binding. It's all down to that hinge, that critical hinge movement in the binder. How does having a cover and then another cover joined round the back by a spine, how do those facets of that product, that construction, how is it constructed in a way that is conducive to good flatability? And this is what frustrates me. Not that I'm going to lose any sleep over it, because the bottom line, and I don't know whether someone from Filofax will ever watch my podcast or listen to it, but you never know. The bottom line is that there is plenty of choice out there. If you want a binder or a personal organizer with good flatability, then either pick for instance, a Filofax with good flatability. If it's used, then you have more choice, because a lot, not all, but a lot of Filofaxes from the 20th century have really good flatability. I didn't know it at the time, and I've mentioned this before, but when I bought my Filofax Sherwood in W. Smith's back in September 1993 for $49.99, and keep the change, my good man, which is about £100 today in today's money as I record this in late August 2025. I didn't realise at the time that what I was buying was, I would call it, and this is the phrase, peak flatability. Before then, when binders were typically leather with no man-made substrate or base, the flatability with a brand new binder, say a personal size slimline 3CL, wasn't there. You had to really manipulate it. And I'm picking the 3CL because I have maybe a dozen examples of the 3CL, and the flatability varies from absolute zero to perfect. The same model, the very same model, and it is a function of the design that with a purely leather construction you can improve flatability. It takes some time, but it's doable, and it's certainly doable if over the course of many years a previous owner has used that binder in anger to such an extent that flatability is achieved, but it's not absolutely guaranteed. And then along came some designs, including the Sandhurst, including which was made in Italy, and it's one that I rate very highly, including, and we talk about personal size binders here, including my own Sherwood, which was made in, well, at least it was sold to me in 1993, so I'm assuming it was made within a year of sale, where rather than an all leather construction, Filofax introduced, and this was still while manufacturing was in England, they introduced a construction method where there were stiffeners placed inside the front cover and the back cover and the spine as well. And then there was a thin layer of leather stuck on top and all sewn together, and it looks fantastic. And although the leather is very thin, and it sandwiches a man-made substrate, it has stood the test of time. And crucially, the big advantage, even though I didn't know it at the time because it was my first Filofax, was that there was perfect flatability from day one, because it was designed that way. It was designed that way with a multi-piece substrate, so that there was a natural hinge between the component parts, so that it opens on that hinge, both the front and back covers. You know what I'm talking about. And then we moved into the 21st century, and we know anecdotally that the quality of the leather on some models, not all, some became very exotic as the Filofax brand morphed or changed itself from a utilitarian product aimed at business, the clergy, the military, into something that had, I wouldn't say they changed to a fashion accessory, because that would be unfair, because many of these binders were marketed at very high prices. But they certainly marketed exotic models to affluent people who were caught up in the time with this accessory, in the same way now that people fall in love with their iPhones and are willing to pay £700,000-900,000 for their iPhone, sometimes anything up to, for the top models, £1,500 or $1,500, $1,600 for a product that, as I understand it, costs a tiny fraction of that. And these initiatives are the sort of initiatives that any business would investigate and perhaps apply to stay afloat in a market where I call it the Filofax bandwagon, where other companies could see the profit element on something that, where, let's face it, there's a very high profit margin with something that is made in the Far East. That's why, let's face it, that's why production was moved to the Far East, because of labour rates. But with a bit of pizzazz, you could spark demands that meant that, because it was an icon. It was an icon where admittedly it faded a little bit, and I'll explain that in a little while. It became a must-have accessory for quite a few people, and the profit must have been very welcome for shareholders, owners and shareholders of the brand. And that's how business works. And we shouldn't decry that. If a product is there and it's a price that we can afford, and it invokes the marketing of that product invokes desire in ourselves, and we can see a useful purpose for the product, then why not? And at the end of the day, I can't think of many things that are more useful than a ring-bound organizer like a Filofax, that also potentially has the ability to last a lifetime, from student to retirement. Although, if the quality, that is obviously dependent on the quality of the materials and the construction and the quality of the ring mechanism, which, as we know anecdotally, has been cheapened over time. But that cheapening, I suspect their reasoning would be survival, as more and more rivals came out to take a bit of that Filofax slice, that piece of the action. So Filofax had to respond, and so they chose to reduce prices by cheapening the materials, closing manufacturing bases in the UK and moving manufacturing halfway around the world to significantly reduce labour rates. So here we are with an amazing opportunity for all of us who are fans of the brand. There are tens of thousands of Filofaxes out there, and I want to explain something about this, because, and give me some rope here, because I have had a few comments where people have said, and I'm just a small player within this community, but people notice what I say, and that has, in my opinion, and other people's opinions, because what they're saying is, here am I talking about something like the Guildford Mini Extra Slim, which I believe is the greatest design of binder that Filofax has ever made. It's the smallest one ever made, and I've got a review about that, as you know, and it has been let down by the quality of the materials, notably the lining, which kind of peels, and also the ring mechanism, which is not the best. But when I bought my two examples, I've got one that's heavily used and one that I haven't used at all, even though it's boxed and ostensibly brand new. You've only got to open it once and look at it, and the lining's it's very imperceptible, but I can see the lining is starting to peel, and I've never used it. And it's not in an attic or a basement where there's large variations in temperature, which can cause peeling due to the different coefficients of expansion of different materials. It's in a fairly, my filofaxes are kept in a fairly stable temperature with minimal variation. Typically it's, in the UK, in a house, you might get an ambient temperature of 20 degrees plus or minus 5 degrees at most, maybe a little bit less. If you've got central heating, it might only be 2 or 3 degrees. And you've got reasonable levels of humidity, not too dry, not too wet. So you could imagine that a filofax stored in these conditions, and then I pass, and then that filofax goes to my daughter, and then one of my grandchildren, and then maybe their children. You can imagine that a filofax or a leather-bound book, that's 300 or 400 years old. I've got one leather-bound book that I'm working on at the moment. Working on is a misnomer. I'm not an antique book restorer, but I'm working on one, and that was made in 1701, and it's seen better days. But I imagine that in this house and then the subsequent house and going down my descendants, if leather is kept in sort of fairly constant temperature and humidity, it would last potentially hundreds of years. But in an attic where you've got a daily extreme of temperatures that probably might end up to be maybe 20 or 30 degrees centigrade, that might not do that book any favours. But you've got a situation where, and I'm digressing over a digression, you've basically got a situation where an enthusiast such as myself talks up a product, enthuses over it because it is my passion, and then the perception of value rises, and it only has to rise in a handful of people when that product is, take the Guildford Mini Extra Slim, which was only made for just over a year or so, for that product to rise. To the extent that I have had several, maybe a dozen requests. Would you be interested in selling one of your Guildford Mini Extra Slims, or specifically the one that's boxed and almost brand new? And people comment that that's not fair. And I'm rambling here, but forgive me. Hang in. If you're still here at the end, if you're one of the 20% that's still with me at the end, I appreciate that. And give yourself a gold star for being one of the 20%. It's roughly on my channel about 20% at the end. 20% of people watch the whole video. And thank you. So I've had some criticism, if you like, for being on YouTube and talking about some binders in an enthusiastic way, that their perception is, and to be honest, I do agree with them that might boost the desire of certain models, which means you have to pay more for them. But this is my argument, and I've mentioned it before, but it's worth mentioning it again. And this is a really, really important time for Filofax users for this very purpose, for this reason. There was a massive boom in the popularity of the Filofax brand, as we know, in the 1980s. And if you were someone that bought a Filofax back in the day, let's say mid-20s to mid-40s, some of those people now are passing on. Some of those people have relatives, descendants, children who are clearing out a house or an apartment, and they open the drawer and they find a Filofax in the drawer, hardly used, and everybody has a smartphone these days. And no one can be any doubt about what the product is, because it has, all these Filofaxes have the Filofax stamped in them. Some of them, like my Filofax Sherwood, don't have a model name, but a lot of the more recent ones do. But what people might do, even if they've got both feet in the digital age and they're not remotely interested in the Filofax they've discovered in the drawer of the recently departed relative, they've got their smartphone, they will look on typically eBay, and they will see that some Filofaxes command high prices. They will also know how to list an item on eBay or Vinted or Facebook Marketplace, because certainly I would say most people, especially since lockdown, since COVID, when there was, I believe, eBay, certainly in the UK, eBay reported a 40% increase in sales. And consumer programs, there's a lot of people on furlough here in the UK getting paid by the government to sit at home doing nothing. And they were looking at side hustles. One of them is buying and selling stuff on eBay and other sites, but certainly all the shops were closed other than essential ones. None of the provincial bricks and mortar auctions were open, so it was an online thing. But people discovered, more than any time in history, the value, or at least the perceived value, of binders. So there are very few bargains out there now, as we know, if we look. Very few bargains. But because there are more Filofaxes online now than there were, say, 12 years ago when I started buying and selling Filofaxes, I definitely, from my experience, know that there are more Filofaxes being traded. It's probably an indication that more Filofaxes are coming on the market because a lot of those original adopters in the 80s have come to the end of their lives, and their binders, often stuck in the back of a drawer sometime, are coming up for disposal. And so and it's a law of supply and demand, although the demand for binders is rising, the supply, I think, is also rising almost as quickly. It's not quite there because it's still a finite market, with the exception of some facsimile binders that are coming onto the market that are made, as I understand it, in India to very, very high specifications, the sort of specifications that were fairly standard when they were made in England, high quality facsimile models. Some of them come up. Typically like a Winchester facsimile model for the Japanese market. That is, we don't get them here in the UK. In fact, when Filofax celebrated their centenary back in 1921, here, at least here in the UK, we got virtually nothing. It's a bit glib to say, but all we got was a few stickers. We didn't get any special facsimile models at all. The Japanese market did, because that's their demands, their standards are much higher than they are here from a marketing perspective. And Filofax aren't stupid; they know that, and so that is where the best models go. Certainly the facsimile models. Well, we got nothing, which was very frustrating, because I'm quite jealous of. I know one of my Facebook friends has the 75th anniversary, blue ribbons, wooden case. Oh, fantastic! What would I give for one of those? Well, I wouldn't give too much, but if one came up for the right money, I would probably buy it. If only to review it and then resell it again. This is what I do. I buy and sell, and I've been doing this since my school days, buying and selling Mars bars in the playground. They're making 0.5p profit on each one. It's in my blood. So I would probably do that, but that is another story. However, prices are going up. So what do we got at the moment in what is the state of play for the Filofax brand? Well, I'm in the same boat. I'm not privy to what is discussed behind closed doors. But what I can do, and I have done over the last 18 months, in response to people's popular requests, is to review. Even though I'm more a fan of vintage binders, I have bought a few brand new binders from the current range. I think I bought 3 or 4. And as you know, I stopped doing it because I found out that what do you do? What do you do when you buy a brand new product? Can you imagine buying a car where the door doesn't shut properly? That might have happened with UK manufacturing in the 70s when there was lots of strikes, etc., which is why the car industry completely collapsed in the UK. But it doesn't happen now. The car industry, the automotive industry, really appreciates that you have to get these issues right. And I hate to say it, but Filofax, although they have a solution, my perception is the solution to this problem of bad rings, gaps, rings that are poorly aligned, etc. Their solution is to have a no quibble customer service backup, which is great, absolutely great. I personally think that it would be better to do 2 things. One is check them before you put them in the box in China or India or Vietnam or where. I don't know I know that there is many products that used to be manufactured in China because of cheap labour rates are being moved to other countries with even cheaper labour rates, because the labour rates in China, the expectations of life in terms of the material acquisition The standards are higher, much higher now. So China is becoming slightly more expensive to manufacture as a base. And so we are seeing products, whether it be filofaxes or T-shirts, made in other countries where it can be done more cheaply. But we have a state of play where things aren't perfect. There's good customer service. If you buy a filofax with poor rings, then you can just let them know and they'll say, post it back and we'll send you another one. Or perhaps a store would just exchange it. I know that when I was in the John Lewis store about early last year, 2024, they were selling off quite a few Norfolk A5s that, shall we say, had some wear because they were being handled in the store, and that's a good thing, a good way of doing it, I think. So full marks to John Lewis for actually allowing people to handle the merchandise. But they have excellent customer service. But what would I like to see? What would I like to see? And I'm kind of heading towards a conclusion here, even though we're not. I can see that we're up to 46 minutes. So this might be a little bit shorter than an hour, but I want to continue with this theme because I've got a whole list of things I want to talk about, but I just thought, as this has evolved into just one particular theme, I think I'm gonna stay with it. And that is the things that there's two things, I think, and maybe three things. First of all, I looked at the FLB Group's turnover. So it's a publicly traded company. So it's a matter of record, and you can look this information up. Their turnover is declining, and because they're involved in three different things: the Filofaxes, the Let's Diaries, and the Blue Line stationery. It's not really possible to ascertain how this decline in turnover is affecting their Filofax lines. But certainly, and I put the feelers out a couple of weeks ago to those in America, and said, have Filofax prices gone up? And at the time, a handful of people, thank you very much, you know who you are, reported that prices hadn't gone up. But today, and this, I guess, triggered this whole podcast, or at least what I started out to achieve, and that is prices have gone up in the States. I'm assuming that it's due to tariffs, and whatever you see, however you perceive tariffs, it's obviously shall we say, a complication in the market. I'm connected to the bicycle trade here in the UK, and I can report that several companies, because of tariffs, have stopped shipping completely. Certainly, I've read, I'm not connected to the motor industry, but I have read that Jaguar cars, Jaguar Range Rover, very, very popular in America, as we all know, put exports to the US on hold. And I don't know whether they've resumed. I haven't investigated that, but it is a tricky thing. these tariffs are a tricky thing, and there's no real certainty in the camera market as well. Cameras being made in China, some of them are now being made in other countries who have lower tariffs. I'm a photographer, not a professional photographer, but I like taking pictures, and I look at cameras from time to time and think, I quite like that, but I'll wait a bit. It's a tricky thing, and you can spend a lot of money on cameras, as many of you know. But we live in a global marketplace where the artificial fluctuations in price as a result of tariffs can cause enormous problems to those countries where these products are made. So we will see what happens about that. But what is the state of the nation, as it were, when it comes to Filofax? In my humble opinion, one commentator amongst many. Well, I personally think, given the fact that it's not necessary to reinvent the wheel, I personally think that flatability is a desirable, good flatability is a desirable trait, maybe even an essential trait for this product. The humble or not so humble personal organizer. Not such a problem with A4 and A5 models because there's some real heft there, some weight. But personal size and pocket size and mini size are particularly susceptible to what I call the clamshell design, where if you want to use it for work, one-handed, while you have your other hand engaged with a mouse or a mobile phone, or feeding your child, or chopping vegetables, or making a cup of coffee, there are so many use cases for using a Filofax one-handed that for many people, good flatability would be a good thing. And what I sometimes think, I suspect that new users, they are influenced by other people in the workplace, across a crowded cafe or in a library. They see people using a Filofax or some other binder, and they think, I'd like to. That looks good. But what they may not realise when they buy a binder is the problems they may face if they are unlucky enough to buy a binder unwittingly that has poor flatability, when they will come to the conclusion, fairly sharpish, perhaps within days or even hours of buying it, they will come to the conclusion that it's an absolute pain to use because they need a second hand to hold it open while they write. And I have made the jokes in the past that some Filofaxes, you need a personal assistant to hold it open while you write in it. And although that sounds bizarre, that is the way of it. So that is the first thing I would do. I would think about the products you've had before. Taking, for instance, and I know that some of the early Filofaxes are a little bit too utilitarian for people because they don't have pockets. People like to have everything in one place, and they like card slots and zip pockets. I get it. Even though I'm not really into the whole everything in one place myself, I totally get it that is probably it's likely to be desired features for most people, and I understand that. So if anyone from Filofax does watch this, I would say get a Filofax Sherwood, buy it on eBay, and or you could borrow mine as long as you give it back. No, don't borrow mine, because the next thing I'm going to say is dissect it, cut it up, and have a look at how that is constructed, and then get one of your current models, like the Malden, which is very popular, cut that up and have a look to see what's different with the construction methods. And you've only got to take the leather off the cover, and you'll be able to, it will be obvious to you, the difference. And I'm not going to bang on about the construction methods, but if you dissect those two models, it would be obvious the differences in construction. Would a Filofax Sherwood construction cost more than a Malden? Probably. But given that this is a high margin product made at low labour rates on the other side of the world, the actual increase in cost of the factory gate price would be very, very small indeed, commensurate with the total and final retail price from the store to the ultimate consumer, the eventual consumer. It would be very, very small. I would hazard a guess that it would be less than $1 on a product that might typically cost between $60 and $150. Not a lot. It's not a lot. But why would this be? Why do I think this is an imperative strategy? The reason why I think this is important for Filofax as a brand is because of new people, new companies entering this arena. Plotter has been going for 5 years. Me Plus, I'm a bit of a fan of Me Plus. They are making binders. They're expanding their range. They're making binders using the best quality materials with the best ring mechanisms, Krauss rings, although there are others, I believe. And they are shaping they not only understand how to get good flatability and verging on perfect flatability with these products. There's a way they do it, but they are also marketing the flatability as a unique selling feature. So I can't see how the Filofax brand can ignore that, because flatability is now becoming, for many people, for many users, it's becoming such a ubiquitous and desirable attribute in a binder that I would say continuing to make a product which has poor flatability just to save a small amount of money in the manufacturing process is a recipe for disaster. And I would hate it. I would absolutely hate it if Filofax, the Filofax brand, disappears as we know it, or certainly is diminished to the point where it's no longer a viable business, I'm sure it won't. But what if it did? What if we got to the point where the Filofax brand ceased to exist? Because in the same way Kodak didn't adopt digital technology and they were overtaken by Fujifilm, and now we're, Kodak had to enter bankruptcy protection to prevent it disappearing completely. What if we saw the same sort of thing happening to the Filofax brands? They're up against it because there needs to be some acceptance that you cannot, there is a limit to how much value you can place on the actual brand as a market leader. It's the well-known brand. I mean, the name Filofax is so synonymous that people sell binders from other businesses, from other manufacturers, and they call them Filofaxes. It's a bit like the Hoover, isn't it? You may be using a Dyson, but you're doing the hoovering. So the brand's name is very, very valuable, but it's losing ground. It's losing ground because people like me, and I don't mean I'm sure I am just a small part in a larger growing awareness, but I am obviously a big fan. I'm a big fan of Plotter, Woozy Studio, Me Plus, all great brands. There's also who we talk about? Let's have a look, because I've completely forgotten. Where is it? Vanderspec, and I'm just looking at I won't show it up, but I'm show it on the screen. But I'm holding a really nice Vanderspec. Those companies are small enough to offer a degree of customization, different ring sizes perhaps, different placements of pockets, etc. And the thing is, the way things are going with Filofax prices, and it's only my observation of the market, if you're pricing products using sort of budget rings, budget construction methods, budget materials against high ends construction methods, thoughtful approach to maximizing flatability, using the best quality leathers, the best quality rings, and you are marketing products in a global marketplace, and the sizes, the ring sizes and the paper inserts are completely compatible with the Filofax brand, and you're doing it at the same or cheaper price than the market leader who's not offering that level of quality, there must come a time where people do not think that a Filofax represents, certainly at the high end, the value that it used to. There is plenty of choice out there, and more people are aware of that choice. The one thing I think Filofax has got a really, really good. There is another thing. I don't know with the W. Smith's chain of stores in British high streets have ended, and they've sold that part of the company off after over 250 years. I don't know whether they're probably stocking Filofaxes, probably the higher end in their existing stores at airports and railway stations. Maybe, I don't know. I need to check. But where I live now, I don't have an old former WH Smith store. But I need to go and check. I need to go and check whether they're still being sold. I'm not sure they are. It's a tricky thing, but Filofaxes could disappear completely from the high street here in the UK. I'm not saying it's dying a death, because it's not, because you can buy directly from Filofax themselves online, and they offer a fantastic level of service at a price, and at that price, the more expensive binders, I think, do not offer good value for money as they used to. But certainly the cheaper models, and particularly when they offload binders to TK Maxx or TJ Maxx, as it is in America, where you can get a very, very good deal indeed at the lower ends, I think that's where they're going to continue to score big. But at the top end, models like the Filofax Heritage, the Norfolk, the Malden, and there are some others that slip my mind at the moment. I think the Filofax are going to struggle. The Filofax brand is going to struggle. But I could be wrong, and I hope I'm proved wrong. But it is what it is, as they say in the UK. So, slightly over an hour. And let me know what you think about this kind of podcast. So I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to carry on. I'm going to change things around on the podcast, and not necessarily just do a question and answer or comment and respond. I'm going to mix it up. But just a bit of housekeeping here. There's three things I want to do here. I mean, I've really enjoyed talking for 1 hour about one topic. So there might be more. I think there's going to be more podcasts, more frequent, and some might be like this. Some might be a mixture of stuff. I haven't decided yet, and there'll be also ones where I'm commenting on people. I'm going to be responding to people's comments, but within that, there have been commenters that are offering me so much feedback and so much interesting and inspiring ideas that in some circumstances I may well make a podcast specifically for that one topic of conversation, because it needs to be addressed. But let me know what you think about those ideas. The reason why I've been experimenting with podcasts. And I haven't done too many because they're so long, about an hour. I mean, this is 1 hour, 9 minutes, so forgive me. I have struggled over the first half of this year because I haven't had that energy to do it, and my lungs and talking, etc. But as you found out in this one video, I've managed it quite well, so I'm actually quite pleased about that. Obviously, channel members have their own thing, which is a coffee break, where it's very, very similar to this podcast, but they have their own kind of podcasts, but I call them coffee breaks to avoid confusion. But what I am doing, which is a slight change, is I've now got so many channel members who they pay me. Typically, my channel members pay me £1 a month, or the equivalent in their currency, and there's a growing range of exclusive material. But also, they get to see my shorts before anybody else, and they will get to see this podcast before the rest of you, which is only fair because they're paying me money for a premium service. But then it is what it is. It is what it is, and I'm just starting to struggle here. So I will say thank you very much. I'll leave it there. Until my next podcast, take care and goodbye.